Hello and welcome to the Higher Education Finance Series, Cohort 13 Conversations. The panel for tonight at 5 p.m. for this segment will be entitled What It Is and What It Ain't, the Truth of Black Female Empowerment and Self-Resiliency, where we will discuss the truth of what it means to be a Black woman in higher education, high-profile professions. Furthermore, the goal of this panel is to provide tips and wisdom of how to effectively cope and heal from financial and emotional trauma. I am your host, Ashlee B. Daniels, and now I would like to introduce my phenomenal and powerhouse panelists. First, we have Ms. Brandy Hicks.
Hello and good evening. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for the invitation. And I look forward to an active and interesting conversation.
Okay. Ms. Brandy Hicks is a Vice President Business Manager at Citibank and serves as a project management strategist with a broad background of delivering innovative solutions that's stimulating business growth. Brandy opens the line of communication between clients, customers, and businesses to get projects done. With over 14 years in both public and private sectors, Brandy has experience in management, team building, professional development, strategic implementation, and company collaboration. She has managed multifunctional teams and projects at Lockheed Martin, MFC, Mary Kay Incorporated, Holly Hunt Furniture and Textiles, and Neiman Marcus. Brandy earned an MBA from University of Phoenix and a Bachelor of Arts in Business Administration at Dillard University. Her community affiliations include President of the Southwest Dallas County Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and several leadership roles in the chapter since 2006. The National Council of Negro Women, Dillard University Alumni Network, and NAACP, She is married to Reginald Hicks, retail store manager, and they reside in Dallas, Texas. They share two sons, Reginald Jr. and Ryland Hicks. Next up, I have Dr. Marzette Stuckey. If you could please give the audience a few words.
I'm just so happy that you asked me to be here. I am going to try my best to add to this conversation with my esteemed panelists. I was happy to hear I have a Dillard alum in the house. What do you want me to say, Ms. Daniels? I teach African American Lit and African Literature at Prairie View A&M University. I got my bachelor's in English from Dillard University. I'm not going to say the year. and my master's in English is from Texas Southern University.
Okay. And I'm going to fill in for you to give you some more.
Okay.
So Dr. Belinda Marzette Stuckey, author of Africana Woman Writers, Performing Diaspora and Staging Healing. Belinda Marzette Stuckey grew up in St. Louis, Missouri. She is an associate professor of African American and African literature at Prairie View A&M University at Prairie View, Texas. Her PhD is from the University of Houston, her master's from Texas Southern University, and her bachelor's is from Dillard University. Her literary research examines the way in which Africana women writers negotiate issues of displacement, alienation, and cultural hybridity. She lives in Texas with her husband, Cortez Stuckey, and extended family, Essie and Lovey Marzette. Okay. Next up, I have Miss Leslie Ekpe. You want to say a few words for me?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Daniels, for having me. I'm so excited, and I'm really always really thrilled to share a platform with my soror. So I'm more than excited to have Ms. Hicks here and to share the platform to discuss a much needed topic here in higher education and in the business world as well. And so thank you for having me.
And Leslie is a member of Delta Sigma Theta. She is currently pursuing a PhD at TCU, not Texas Southern, had to get it right, in higher educational leadership. Ekpe is an alumni of Alabama A&M University, where she earned her bachelor's degree in management, and the University of Alabama at Birmingham, where she obtained her master's in communication management. She also holds an MBA from Sam Houston State University. Ekpe is a former professional communications teacher for Uplift Education Public Charter School Network. Her research seeks to promote access for marginalized students in education with a specific focus on Black women in leadership, college access policies, student activism in the digital age, racial politics in education, and fairness within intercollegiate athletics. After this short break, we will dive into our first theme of the night, establishing financial sustainability of Black females in empowerment and self-resiliency programs.
At Prairie View A&M University, we've been igniting passion in students for more than 140 years. It's about inspiration. It's about global influence. It's about self-expression and individuality. It's about trailblazing a path of excellence. It's about engaging in the greater community. Above all, it's about helping you realize your dreams. Ignite your passion. Experience Prairie View A&M University.
Okay, and we're back. So the theme that we will be touching on for the first segment is establishing financial sustainability of Black females in empowerment and self-resiliency programs. Also, side note for those in the audience who would like to answer or ask questions can do so in the comment section. It will pop up, we'll have someone pop right up and answer those questions, okay? So let's get started, ladies. Over time, multiple mentoring programs have been created that target Black females, but sometimes do not emphasize group development and exemplary professionalism. This could look like a detrimental and endless competition against each other in the workplace or in the classroom. So the first question is going to be directed to Dr. Marzette and Leslie. One of you can go first. But the question is, in your opinion, why do you think Black women in high-profile positions are less likely to assist upcoming Black female professionals?
Miss Ekpe, you want me to go? You want to go? I'll go. I'll say this. I don't have all the answers for you, Miss Daniels, except I will say that I think that we may be bred, I don't know if that's a good term, maybe I should just say raised to be so self-sufficient. Unfortunately, I don't think that's always a good thing, that we perhaps lack the skills. At least that's true for me. I didn't have the skill set necessary to ask for assistance or ask for it in an effective way. And I think that was a pattern throughout my entire education, higher ed, professionalism as well. It just went across the board. That was my case. And I try to instill something different in my female students so that they feel as though they have a voice and that they can ask for assistance and help and at least find the resources available, because that was not something that was part of my mentorship.
Okay.
Yeah, to piggyback off Dr. Marzette, I think we need to think about a couple of things first. So Black women, she spoke on resilience and resiliency. And so Black women who are seated in higher positions oftentimes have fought many battles and overcome adversity to get to those positions. Mm. And so I almost feel as though some of the structures that are put in place are for to continue to have this system of we only need one, right? And so too many of you all is not what we are asking for. And so there's this threat almost in existence. So when another Black woman enters the environment in which you already serve to a high capacity, it could be a threat in one instance, and then in another instance, it's almost as if, you know, now I have to share my, you know, my coming up, right, with someone else. And so sometimes I believe it is a threat because of the structures that were put in place to keep us separate. But like Dr. Marzette stated, I mean, there also needs to be a back end to mentoring and to the system in place to understand that, you know, we can all be on the same platform, right? We can share the platform, we can share the resources, and that is the only way we will continue to grow. And so I really think the system has to be addressed. The structures in play, the practices that are put in play that are pushed upon us to think that another woman that looks like us is a threat, or we can't share the same space, or we can't share the same wins.
Okay, so this is a question not in my notes, but I'm going to add it a little bit. I'm going to add a spin to it. So whenever you are, Leslie, when you were talking about, you know, dismantling the system, right? So there is, I wonder what that looks like for Black women at predominantly white institutions and HBCUs, because you work and attend at a predominantly white institution where, you know, I would have to fight for my space or fight for my place in this area, in this space that is not meant for me. But what does that look like for women who are, you know, fighting against each other in a place where you're supposed to feel safe? You're supposed to feel as though this is for me, a Black space. Any thoughts, Dr. Marzette or you're going to be doctor soon, but Miss Ekpe?
I think, I mean, it just depends. Once again, I think that's a great question. But I continue to go back to the structure, right? And so the structure that was placed upon us in which we have to excel at, and I like to use, in replace of PWIs, I use HWIs historically white institutions because that is what they were. And so in addressing the systems and structures that are put in place, we need different models for success. We need different models that will allow and erect a sense of belonging on campus, right? Because it's one thing to try to retain Black students, Black women, Black faculty, Black staff, but if the systems and structures that are in place do not create a sense of belonging or create avenues to success, it is a barrier. So we're actually moving backwards when we say, I mean, we just need to address the elephant in the room, right? The systemic racist practices that are embedded in our walls, and then we can address the next part, right? And so it's time to go back to the drawing board, because the models that are instituted into, whether it be a HBCU or HWI, we need to address what's happening within the walls, because it's one thing to retain, but to or it's one thing to recruit, but to retain, if the practices don't match, I mean, there lies the problem.
Right. Okay. And now this question is directed toward you, Ms. Hicks. There aren't that many programs that target financial stability for Black women. Yes, we have, empowerment, but not enough financial know-how. What do you think is the cause of the key issue of poor financial management of these programs? Or what do you think is the key reason as to why more programs are not developed? Because I can count on my hand how many programs at different institutions that are designed specifically for Black women. But whenever I've done my research and looked into these programs, they don't so much talk about and I think every college student needs to be aware of their finances, even out post-college. What do you think?
So a lot of it has to deal with the education and the support of resources that are targeted to our demographics. And for women of color and the communities of color. And I don't want to just only speak to Black women, because as a Black woman myself, I am in organizations that also address a variation of color. And so when I see in Delta itself, what we want to do is provide those resources through financial literacy and education and financial fortitude. So a lot of the programming that we do is catered to our communities, looking at those specialized demographics. And now that we're in a virtual capacity, what we're doing is introducing webinars or forums of this nature that speak to that education, whether it is the single mother or whether it is someone who is dealing with stressors or lack of resources during COVID-19, but speaking to whatever their current issues are, and customizing our financial literacy, coupling it with other programs that provide resources to their normal, common, everyday needs first, and then driving in the connection to financial literacy. And when those resources aren't readily available in those communities, we kind of get stuck, right? We don't have those tools. We don't know how to manage our finances properly. And then it becomes this history, this legacy of debt, right? And not creating that generational wealth that we really want our children and our children's children to have. So making financially sound decisions. Just last week, I was leading a seminar through Delta Sigma Theta, where we invited an investor and an attorney who provided information regarding living wills and retirement and things of that nature, so that we can educate our community. But I think it has a lot to deal with, we don't know where to go and what resources are out there that really cater and customize to our communities, right? And so providing that, organizations such as what I've just mentioned, providing that to our demographics and our communities in areas that look like us.
That is an amazing response. I think it would be interesting to see administrators or those in leadership roles try to implement, those ideas, because the way that you piece it together, it was almost as if this is a no-brainer. We should be doing this all the time. But the rules, the procedures, the stipulations that the board or even, the president herself, or I'm just thinking of my institution of Prairie View A&M University, I'm pretty sure there are millions of hurdles to get to that point. And figuring out how to break those down, now that is a study within itself. So far, this has been an amazing conversation. We'll go on a short break and continue the conversation, touching on the second theme of the night, which is self-identity and productivity of Black women in the profession.
I'm Emma Joanna Thomas Smith. My perspective on philanthropy is that, from the beginning, students don't have money. And it costs to go to college. It's always cost more than most people could afford, but now it really costs. And so the philanthropy, from my perspective, makes a difference in providing a high quality learning environment. But the scholarship piece is for me. That's where I'm passionate. You need to make sure that students don't leave college because they just can't afford to pay sometimes a small amount of money. So sustaining that momentum that comes with their progression through their matriculation, it takes money.
Even though there is so much against us,
you will see me choose to protect myself and my community from the coronavirus by wearing a face covering.
Because it's going to take all of us thinking about one another. And even with my face covered, you will see me.
You will see me as a mother, a wife, a friend.
As an athlete who gave everything to the game I love.
As a father, leading by example.
As a sister.
An entertainer.
As a champion for my people.
You will see me finding a light in a dark time.
To unlock our creativity and push our craft.
You will see me demanding the space to tell the stories that matter.
As a man who knows that tough times don't last, but tough people do.
Join us in wearing a face covering to help stop the spread of the coronavirus.
Because covering your face is one small act of kindness that has the power to bring us together.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. We are moving into our second segment, which is self-identity and productivity of Black women in the profession. Again, for audience, if you would like to comment or place your questions in the comment section, you are more than welcome to do that, and we'll answer your questions. So, Black women, or shall I say, all women of color, are ethereal beings: a mother, a wife, a daughter, a niece, a friend. Women of color wear so many hats with so many responsibilities. However, if not careful, exhaustion could make a woman of color lose herself and her identity. So I'm going to ask Ms. Hicks, what could be one strategic plan that could be implemented, with your background, of course, what could be one strategic plan that could be implemented on PWI and HBCU campuses that enhances healthy financial decision-making and productivity for women of color?
So I really like this question a lot. As women of color, it's important that we equip our minds and understand the sense of meaning and purpose, because we face so many challenges with all aspects of our life. But what is very vital is to understand and master some of the things that cause us stress, and how to continue to build that resiliency, and just performing at your best daily. So again, speaking to the needs of a woman, coping with her daily self-care, her self-performance, even some of the damaging effects of stress first, speaking to those needs. And then coupling it again with a program that helps her to find her voice, whether that voice is a sense of education in the area of finances, and how to go about the resources to get the correct career, the advancement and progression in their daily life, their daily jobs, as well as providing them with the tools necessary to make sure that their households are cared for long term, and strengthen themselves, right? That's one less care or one less stress when they have a financial plan and that background and those resources that appeal to the needs of her family. So for her to be resilient and for her to do her best in her career and in her daily life, she also has to know that that is one less stress, that she's equipped with the tools that she needs to plan long-term investment strategies, as well as just normal budgeting, right? Household budgeting, income, and really truly making her dollars stretch, right? And create that generational wealth, as I spoke of a little bit earlier.
That's amazing. Okay. I believe we're bringing in Dr. Hoffman Miller. She was on the call and she's going to join us in a second. But this will be a question for her and Dr. Marzette. You both are professors at Prairie View A&M University. And with your background, how do Black women operate in high-profile professional positions? Or how do you operate as a professor, knowing of your identity, of who you are? How do you operate on campus? And what do you think is at stake for women of color in these roles?
Ms. Daniels, I thought a lot about it even before the panel. And as Ms. Hicks was speaking, I think we hear a lot about stress and we know to avoid it, but I'm not always sure we know exactly what stress feels like or what it looks like. You know, there tends to be a lot of talk about it and around it, you know, hypertension, stress, get rid of stress. But I was not really aware of how stress affected me, nor was I aware of how it felt in my body, because I was kind of used to being under stress without knowing that that was how I was operating. Just kind of my norm was to be under stress. And so I think the more we can become educated really on what it means to be under stress and to be without stress. And that doesn't necessarily mean that I have, you know, this big pile of cash, because going into the arts, I was somewhat aware that I wasn't gonna, you know, be at the pinnacle of financial freedom necessarily, but I am much more aware of how stress affects my life today. And I try to balance my life spiritually as well as professionally and socially, so that, you know, even under the auspices of something like COVID, if you can maintain a balance, which I think is a struggle, particularly for women of color, because unfortunately we are used to, you know, having this little black girl magic that means that we can do all of these things, which tend to be unrealistic when you're asking it of another individual. So for me, I think balance, education, and I don't mean, you know, empirical education necessarily, just a place to talk. I have students that are under a tremendous amount of stress this semester, just because of the place that they're put in. And often just having an ear to listen is important for people to, you know, kind of make it through these unprecedented times. So for me, stress is important, and recognizing it and just understanding it in more than just a kind of theoretical way. I think that's very important for our longevity, because it's impossible to maintain the kind of workload and responsibilities that are kind of put in place, as Ms. Ekpe said, part of the infrastructure, if you will. I don't think it's always healthy for us.
Okay, I have chills now. Good job. Y'all are doing great. Okay, so Dr. Hoffman Miller and Ms. Hicks, this question, oh, and Leslie as well. This question is directed to you three, whichever wants to answer first. But from a financial perspective, what should administrators do to ensure that women of color receive adequate care as they matriculate through college?
Well, we have to be, good evening, everyone. I'm glad to see these wonderful sorors representing on our first installment, or our first section on We Lead, and beginning with finance. It's difficult for administrators to actually sustain and support African American and other women of color in leadership roles, because there aren't that many of us. We have to be very, very careful and understand that glass ceiling is sometimes can be a brick ceiling, and understanding the many responsibilities that we have, those responsibilities are not often understood. We are the leaders. We are the individuals that we actually educate the world. From the time children are born to the point where they finally decide that to leave the nest, whether that's at 18 or 38, times have changed. But we have to, more than anything else, support each other. One comment that was made earlier was the fact that we have to, as a sisterhood, we have to come together and share our experiences and mentor those that are coming behind us. Because I know that in talking to Dr. Thomas Smith, we don't want to be here 20 years from now in terms of an active role. We want to be around, but we don't want to be here actually doing any additional work. But it starts with you. You are the leaders, and you have to set the example. So in setting the example, that means that you take the hand of the young person or the individual, irrespective of their age, that's coming behind you, and you lead and guide them, recognizing that it's not going to be easy, but in all instances, support, mentor, collaborate, and understand that we're all in this together. It's not something that we can't hide our sex. We can't hide our proclivities for certain types of passions. We are nurturing women. We are nurturing mothers. We are nurturing sisters, girlfriends, and more than anything else, we're nurturing mentors. And I will let someone else talk because I'll talk for the next half hour.
Thank you, Dr. Hoffman-Miller. And before Ms. Hicks and Leslie comment, Dr. Hoffman-Miller is my professor in the educational leadership, and she is a powerhouse. She has a very, very impressive CV. You have your hand in everything, honestly. But real briefly, Ms. Hicks and Leslie, could you please answer the question? Or would you like for me to repeat the question?
Yeah, I can just add a little tidbit to what Professor Hoffman-Miller has stated. I think that as administrators, we need to be cognizant of the opportunities that other students are receiving versus the students of color. And so what that means is intentionally reaching out to students to make them aware of some of the financial resources that Ms. Hicks was discussing, or reaching out to them and letting them know at a certain stage in their journey through academia, they need to be applying for jobs or whatever it might look like, right? We just need to be aware of these students' transition throughout the academy. And that means being cognizant of the opportunities that we come upon and that we reach out and hand out to the individuals in the academy.
Okay, Ms. Hicks.
I love the responses before me, but I just wanted to add just a little bit additionally, just from a professional standpoint in corporate America, I am where I am today because someone has helped and lent a hand to me and did not leave me behind. Every opportunity that I have been afforded is because of a direct connection to actually someone who looked like me. And although sometimes we forget, we so quickly we arrive and we forget that when you arrive, you should reach back and grab one, right? But that has not been my case. And so I am very intentional that in my corporate career, that now I have the power of influence, that I speak and advocate for those that do not have some of the same opportunities. And large corporations have to take a step back and invest in women of color, in the minority. If you truly want to make an impact, this world is ever evolving and changing. And so we need to talk about some of these unconscious biases that exist and hit them, dead on, right? Because we are not afforded some of the same roles and career advancements as our white counterparts. And so addressing some of those unconscious biases that keep us from being at the center of some of the major decision making that happens that hinder us from career progression. But it's very vital that, again, as you advance, that you take the time to inform and engage, and that these companies, large corporations and organizations invest these resources to educate the broader audience and truly address those unconscious biases.
Amazing, amazing, astounding. We are reaching the end of our panel tonight, ladies. What a phenomenal conversation and input. We'll go on one last short break and give closing remarks when we come back. Okay, we are actually coming to a close. The phenomenal conversation has, we went over time. So that closes our panel discussion, what it is and what it ain't, the truth of Black female empowerment and self-resiliency. I would like to extend a huge thank you to my panelists, and you all were astounding, filled so much with wisdom, and I've learned so much. Also, thank you to our viewers for watching. Have a great night, everyone. Goodbye.